you know, and I would see him almost every day. And when he walked out to a lot of people, it was something. Well, I think we're at that time. We are?
Yep.
So I welcome everybody. I have some a little bit disclaimers I need to read to you and some procedures. So if you'll bear with me, we'll do that, and then we'll call you up one at a time, and the applicants will be over there and the assessor over there. Okay, so let me start out with here first to call the meeting to order, and a roll call. We have Alex Coop.
Here.
Yeah, Jeffrey Crane.
Here.
Peter Coyne, he is absent. David Zilt, you're here.
Yep.
And I'm Ed Getty, chairman. Approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Might I have a motion to accept those?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from our May 14th, 2025 meeting.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you. Now on to new business for tonight. Some procedural things. The board may ask questions during each appeal. The board may receive any oral or documentary evidence, but shall exclude any irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious evidence. Each party shall have the right to present his or her case or defense by oral or documentary evidence, to submit rebuttal evidence, and to conduct such cross-examination as may be required for a full and true disclosure of the facts. After the appeal is presented, the board may continue to deliberate or may close the hearing and continue deliberations for up to 60 days from the date of the appeal, or longer if the tax payer extends the time and has been submitted by the applicant. After a decision is reached, the secretary for the board shall issue a written decision for each appeal and send to the applicant, the assessor, and the county commissioners within 10 days of that decision. If the board fails to give a written notice of its decision within 60 days of the date of the application was filed, unless the applicant agrees in writing to further delay, the application is deemed denied, and the applicant may appeal to the Superior Court as if there had been a written denial. So that's kind of how that works. So what I'd like to do is invite our first applicant for a Paul and Tony Good, if you want to come up over here, for their appeal request on 22 Zaklo Island Road in Harrison, map and lot 21-0106-07. And the assessor, you're back. Nice to see you. Yes. So as I mentioned, Mr. Good, you can go ahead and present whatever that you'd like to present to us, and then the board can ask questions whenever after that, and then we'll give the assessor time to present, and then you can ask questions of anybody, and we'll try to make sure we hear everything.
Okay, sounds good.
So, take it away.
Okay, so my name is Paul Good. I'm the owner, along with my wife, Tony Good, of 22 Zakilo Island Road in Harrison, Maine. And what we're going to do, first of all, I'd like to thank the board for being here tonight and for giving us the opportunity to appeal this. Okay, it means a lot, because we didn't feel like we got very far when we presented it with the town of Harrison, because they just didn't seem like they were according to them, as knowledgeable in real estate and appraising as they needed to be to make a decision. So they basically told us they were going to make a decision along with the appraiser. I mean, because that was the person that they hired for the town. So they recommended, 2 out of 3 of them recommended that we come to this board. So I appreciate this board being here tonight and giving us the opportunity, at least to present again. And we hope that, we hope you agree with us. Tonight, what we're going to do is, we're going to talk about 4 items, okay, 4 issues. So I'm going to just talk about them very briefly, and then we'll get into each one. Okay, first thing we're going to talk about is the comparison of our property to 4 Zaquilo Island Road. It's another property on the island, okay? And it's the lowest assessed property value on the island. Okay, so we want to talk about that property, and we want to compare that to our property, okay? The second thing we want to do is we're going to talk about the island and the fact that the island is a unique property, okay? So it really needs to be looked at differently. I think everybody in this room would probably agree to that. So the question is, how do you assess an island property? Okay, I think, so that's what I want to talk about, all right? And what our thoughts are and what the town of Harrison's
The
position.
feedback we got from the town.
The feedback we
and
got
the
from the
assessor.
town. Okay. The third thing we're going to talk about is the comparison of our property to a mainland property right across the lake from us, okay? And the reason we want to talk about that is because we've been told by the town that we are allowed a 30% reduction in our property value, okay, compared to mainland properties, okay? And so we want to compare that property to our property to show, the comparisons, okay? And we'll get into that. And finally, we want to talk about the sale of a property on the island that took place, okay? That we don't see anywhere in this documentation, so we want to talk about that. All right, so let's get into the first issue. The first issue we want to talk about, and I'm going to do a lot of talking, but if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to jump in at any time. The more questions we have, we feel the better it is for our position. We want to be upfront, honest, and answer any questions that you have, okay? Because we have not been able to get answers to our questions. We have not, the Parker Appraisal has not answered the phone when we call them, okay? So if you guys are knowledgeable in real estate, it would be great, because we're not knowledgeable in real estate. And so we have to make assumptions, and we're going to need help and assistance on some of this stuff. And we're turning to you guys to help us out, okay? All right, so the comparison of our property to 4 Zaquilo Island Road, okay? The lowest assessed property value on the island. Okay, so what happens is we were assessed our properties, they were very high. So everyone was given everyone on the island was given the opportunity.
Town.
Excuse me?
Everyone in the town.
Everyone in the town was given the opportunity to talk to Parker Appraisal after the assessments, okay? We met with a representative who had already spoken to another island property owner, and the property owner of 4 Zaquilo Island Road showed us that he got a reduction at his meeting that was just prior to our meeting, okay? And during our meeting, the Parker representative conceded that the island was a unique property and that all island property assessments needed a second look and that maybe they were valued too high, okay? We spoke with another island property owner who also met with another Parker representative at the same day, and he was told the exact same thing. They were going to relook at all the properties. So we decided to wait to see what would happen. That was like our one opportunity to talk to Parker, okay? So we said, okay, we're going to wait, see what happens. They told us they're going to look at it.
Okay.
4 Zaquilo Island Road was the only property that received a significant property reduction. They were the only one, okay? So I called Parker Appraisal many times, okay, to get an explanation as to why that property value was significantly reduced and why no other island properties were reduced. And Parker Appraisal stated that it was unaware of any reduction that was given, and it claimed that if this did happen, and I was told several times, there's no way it could have happened, but if it did happen, it was an error, okay? And that it would be looked into, okay? After calling Parker Appraisal several additional times, I was eventually told that the reduction was due to depreciation, okay? So I asked, what does this mean? What is depreciation? What does that mean, okay? And I was told it was a term in appraisal that appraisers use, and that I wouldn't understand it, okay? It wasn't until we saw Exhibit 3 in the Town of Harrison's information dated 4/25/25, which we received like 10 days ago, okay, this is after a year talking with Parker Appraisal, okay, that we became aware that Parker Appraisal was assessing Forza Island Road as a cove property, okay, a cove property, all right? Never in any conversations with Parker Appraisal were we ever told that the reduction for that property was because it was being assessed as a cove property, okay? No other property owner on Zaquilo Island has ever referred to that property as a cove property. Even the owner has never referred to that property as a cove property, okay? We believe the entire island is a cove, is in a cove, okay? And we believe all the properties in the backside of the island are cove properties. And we have
Is the
some
cove.
pictures I'd just like to show as I'm talking, if you want to just provide
Yeah,
me
I'll
with
give
pictures, to just show that what the cove looks like, and this is called Cape Monday Cove, that the island is in. It's in a cove.
This is a
And you'll
cove.
see the backside of the island has a big circle,
See that
which is
they all-
similar to a
lots of
cove. It
indentation.
narrows into the circle, and we're in that back portion of
This
the lake.
property, and 4 is that one.
Should I keep going while you, okay, okay. So we believe Parker Appraisal is trying to justify something that was done unfairly by representing this property as a cove property. That's what we believe they're doing, okay? We believe it is unreasonable and to significantly reduce a property value that has never been assessed as a cove property, okay, before, okay? And that was not assessed as a cove property when it was initially assessed by Parker Appraisal in the 2024 tax year, okay? They did not assess it as a cove property. They assessed it $5,000 less than my property, okay, when we first got our assessments. It wasn't until they went in and started talking that they made these adjustments, okay? And never before, if you look, go back to 2009, we have information from 2009. If you look at all the property values on the island, they're all very similar. They're all very close to each other. There's no significant differences. So we've been on the island since 1994, and there's never been such a significant variance in any one property on the island. So we feel it's very unfair that just one property has been reduced. Okay. Our question for Parker Appraisal, and perhaps you gentlemen as well, who are knowledgeable in real estate, is what is it about a cove property that would allow such a large discount in property value? And I'll talk about the large discount, okay? But we argue that our property also features a cove,
Has features of a cove.
has features of a cove, okay? Our shorefront is in a small sheltered area that is recessed, okay? It's protected from the wind, okay? And it has virtually no current, okay? We're on the backside of the island, so the wind's coming in this way, we're on the backside, and it comes in like this, okay? We were eventually given a 5% discount because we have shallow waterfront by Parker Appraisal, as stated in the Town of Harrison's abatement letter dated 1/23/25, and in Exhibit 3 of the town's information dated 4/25/25. Okay? Having shallow water creates two problems for us. One, swimming. We can't swim off our dock because the water is too shallow and it's all mud where you touch the bottom of the lake. That's number one. And also, in the summer, the grass and the weeds and everything on the bottom starts growing up as well. So we can't swim off our dock. That's number one, because we're on the back side of the island. Big difference between the back side and the front side of the island, okay? And number two, we have to monitor the water levels to determine when we need to pull in and pull out our docks. So sometimes we have to pull in the docks earlier than we want to, or put them out later than we would have liked to, just based on the water and when the lake's going up and down, because we got to bring the docks in.
They're floating docks.
Floating docks, yeah. Okay? We can't keep our docks out there because in the winter, the ice would hit it, it would ruin the docks. Okay. So, we were only given a 5% reduction for our shallow waterfront. However, the supposed cove property was given depreciation on the property, whatever that is, depreciation, okay, which resulted in a property tax due of $32.24, $32.24 on 54% of that property's value. 54% of that property's value, they paid $32 of tax on, okay? And we were given a 5% discount on our property. Total, okay. This resulted in approximately $150,000 of reduced property value when compared to our property value for Zakilo Island, which equals approximately $1,155. So that's a $1,155 benefit because he's getting this depreciation on his property because it's supposedly a cove property. And we believe all the backside islands are cove property, all the backside properties are cove properties. Okay, therefore, it is clear that the reduction for the cove property is much more financially impactful, and that property, and that property still appears to get a 25% island reduction as well as what we're getting. Okay, so why doesn't this property only receive a percentage reduction similar to the 5% that we receive and that the property next to us also receives? Okay, so there's three properties that are lined up. There's four Zakilo Island property in between us and our property, and us and the guy beside us, we both get 5%, and the guy in the end, he gets the cove property, he gets a 54% reduction on his value. Okay, we believe it is both unreasonable and irrational in the light of the circumstances for Parker Appraisal to not also assess our property as a cove property, and that this error has substantially overvalued our property and an injustice results. And that's why we filled out the application. We feel there's an injustice there, okay? A clear visual of the unfairness as well as the significant financial benefit of being assessed a cove property can be seen in Exhibit 4 of the Town of Harrison's information dated 4/25/25. So if you go to Exhibit 4, yeah, so if you go to Exhibit 4, I can give it to you. real quick. Yeah, it looks like this.
It's from the town.
It's from the letter that they recently sent you. It should be, I don't know, maybe in the front? Oh, the very last
Oh,
page.
yeah. That's
The very back page.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you look at this, right, so it's land assessment versus shore frontage, okay? And if you look at these, you can see one property is significantly lower than all the others in both the graphs. The 592, 200. He's got 250 feet of shore frontage, and his value is at 592. Everybody else's is virtually 700, in the 700,000. There's one at 658, and everyone else is in $700,000 value.
Properties of the island property. The green properties of the island.
Yeah, the green properties are the island properties.
Yes, I've looked at this.
So,
So the 592, 200,
Yeah.
and then at the bottom, the 592, 200 is also in the chart. And you can see how significantly lower he is in all these properties. And all the island properties are in green. So he's significantly lower than all our properties because he's considered a cove property. And my question to Parker and also to this board is, why is that valid that that's a cove property? Should they get that deduction, significant deduction? And if they're getting it, should we be allowed that deduction as well? Because we're also a cove property on the island, being on the island. And if you look at the fact that we are in a cove on the backside of the island. Okay, so that's number one, okay? That covers point number one. Point number two is an island is a unique property, okay? There's no doubt about it, okay? It's very difficult to assess an island, okay? I know it is. I've talked to a lot of appraisers, I've talked to a lot of assessors over the last year. I've talked to Parker, I've talked to the town. No one knows really what to do, okay? Apparently, they've been saying there's only been one sale out there, so we've basically been told everything was gonna be based on that one sale, and that's what we were told. There was one sale, it was for $1,250,000, and that's what they're gonna base everything on. They come in here tonight, they're changing this story, now they got all these other properties, okay? But that wasn't the case. When we went and we talked to them, they said it's all based on one sale, because that's the only sale that's been on the island, okay? So, let's talk a little bit about the island and it being unique, okay? So we live on an island, and we believe an island property is unique, and therefore it needs to be assessed differently than mainland properties. The assessors claim that our property was given a 25% reduction in property value due to uniqueness, okay?
We think that's why. We're not really sure
We
why.
think that's why. We're not sure why we got the 25%, to be honest with you. How did they arrive at the 25%? That would be great to know. We've been asking for years, how did they arrive at 25%? Okay? Why isn't it more than 25%? Okay? We're going to explain to you why we think it should be more, okay? But we would like them to explain to us why it's 25.
Or how they arrived at
And how they arrived at that. And we deserve to know that. I mean, we shouldn't have had to wait a year to find this out, okay? Okay, in the town of Harrison's letter dated 4/25/25, the Cumberland County Board Assessment Review, to the Cumberland County Assessment Review, it states, a significant number of taxpayers in Harrison, as well as across the state of Maine, own properties that are utilized solely during the summer months as secondary residences. Of course they do, right? This is not an allowable way to determine a property's value. Of course it's not. What does this not take into account? Okay. Residents on the lake who live on a mainland property could utilize the property year-round if they chose to. And they could also sell the property, to someone who wants to utilize the property year-round. Okay? We cannot utilize our residents safely and consistently year-round. And we also cannot sell our property to anyone who wants to utilize the residence safely and consistently year-round because we do not have access, big word, access, to our residents year-round. We can't get to our residents year-round. So we're limited to who we can sell our property to. If we have any realtors here, we're limited to who we can sell it to, okay? Also, the same letter states, the island has a panoramic view of Long Lake and surrounding mountains, okay? Well, you have never been to our property.
Well, they saw the pictures. We
Yeah.
don't face any mountains.
We don't face any mountains.
Or open
We're on the
air.
backside of the island. We face the cove. We see a bunch of woods. We see a bunch of grass in the water. Okay, that's what we see. You're talking about the front side of the island. Very nice view on the front side of the island. I would agree with that. I'm on the backside, okay? You should come visit my property, okay?
No view.
No view. Well, it's a nice view, but it's not anything like the front side. Okay. And I get tired of hearing this because we hear this every time we go talk to them, that we got this great property, we got this really nice, you get tired of hearing it, okay? Our lot faces the cove area, okay? We consider it a cove area, okay? And that's why we think we have a cove property. In the same, by the way, a lot of the documentation I submitted to you back in March talks about that our property is cove facing. I think that's where they actually got it from, that the whole idea is cove, okay? In the same paragraph, it states, this is great, residents can traverse the ice to reach their properties, adding a unique seasonable aspect to island living. We can traverse the ice in 3 feet of snow to have a unique aspect of island living. This is absolutely ridiculous, okay? Traversing across the ice approximately a quarter of a mile is a safety risk, okay? Because it is dependent on each winter's weather conditions, right? We don't know what the weather's gonna be like, okay? Was it cold enough to freeze the ice? And is the ice thick enough to cross, right? You gotta find that out. You just don't cross, because it would be a unique experience, okay? How deep is the snow, okay? Are you going to be able to get across in the snow? If you are, you're gonna have to wear your snowshoes, right? And if you're gonna go over there, if you're gonna stay there, you're gonna have to bring your food with you, right? You're gonna have to bring your water with you, okay? You're gonna have to bring anything else you're gonna be taking over there with you, okay? For several months during the year, there is low to no well water due to the dropping water levels, okay? During the winter months, there's no well water. So if you're going in the winter, you're not gonna have any water. And in late fall and early spring, there can be low to no water in the well.
Depending on the lake levels.
It just kind of depends on what happens with the lake and how much they drop the lake and when you're going out to it, okay? That's why we don't go there during that time of the year. Okay, so to wrap this section up, We believe that a 25% reduction in property value for an island property is inadequate, okay? And that the reduction should be greater than 25%. Plain and simple, it should be greater than 25%. We'll let the experts determine that, okay? And we would love if you guys could get an answer to that, because we should be able to get it, we should have an answer to that. There should be some answer to that. And they should at least tell us why it's at 25%, at least. Okay. Section 3, comparison of our property to 70 Pitts Road. 70 Pitts Road is a mainland property. It's directly across the lake from us. We use, all the properties we use were the one next to us, the one next to that one, the one right across from us, okay? We didn't go all over the lake to find stuff, okay? We're using the ones right around us, okay? Based on a comparison of our property to 70 Pitts Road, a comparable property on the mainland, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that has about, and there's documentation in there, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that has about 1,150 square feet, which is basically what we have, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,150 square feet. By the way, for Zakiel Island Road, I forgot to mention, the first, he's a log cabin, I'm a log cabin, he's 3 bedrooms, and I'm a 3-bedroom log cabin, so it's the same house. Okay. But anyway, this house is 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it's about 1,100 square feet. Ours is 3-bedroom, 2-bath, about 1,100 square feet.
The lot size, you didn't say.
The lot size is 1.6 on the guy on the mainland, ours is 1.5 acres. 1.6, very, very equivalent. But basically, it's the best we could do. We could find something very equivalent. Okay, so based on the comparison of our property to 70 Pitts Road, a comparable property on the mainland directly across the lake from us, we do not believe that our property ever received the 30% property reduction the town of Harrison and Parker Appraisal stated we were allowed. We don't think we ever got the deduction, and we're going to explain to you right now why, okay? Okay, so you can see Exhibit 1A and 1B, which is submitted to Cumberland County Board of Assessors with our application of abatement of property taxes dated 3/23/25. Okay, so it's in there, but I'm going to talk about it too. All right, so 70 Pitts Road appears to have a depreciation, once again, hopefully you guys can help us with this, a depreciation factor applied to its property valuation. Therefore, this property is only paying $30.95 on 42% of its property value, okay? So the property is valued at almost $1,100,000, okay, $1,098,700. If you take that and you times it by 42%, you get $461,000. You take the number of thousands is 461 times the 7.7 mill rate. That's $3,550 is the amount of savings they get. $3,550 because they're having this depreciation thing. Okay, so they're getting a tremendous benefit from depreciation too. So we're saying to ourselves, how come we're not getting this depreciation thing? You know, how come we don't deserve this thing? Seems like everyone else is getting it, or at least the properties we're looking at. Okay, so hopefully you guys can help us. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I would like to know the answer to the question. And I can't get the answer.
They also have more water frontage.
Yeah, also, this property has 265 feet more waterfront than we have. And all we were told by Parker is, well, waterfront is the most important thing. Waterfront's the most important thing. This has a lot more waterfront than us, okay? Okay, so Exhibits 1 and 1B. These exhibits are the comparison of 70 Pitts Road, a mainland property located across the lake from us, 22 Zakiel Island Road. The reductions on our exhibit assessments take into account that the comparable mainland property has 265 more feet of waterfront. Exhibit 1A, if you look at 1A that I provided, it illustrates that our total assessed property value did not include the 30% reduction, as stated in the letter. If the 30% reduction were included, the total assessed value of our property would be $635,138. That's what we believe, based on that chart. And, well, we can go through it later if you have any questions on it. But basically what I did on this chart, okay, Exhibit 1A, okay, so I took the value of the land, okay, the value of the whole property for 70 Pitts Road was $1,098,000 at the top, okay? I had to come up with a value of what that 265, and I wrote the wrong number, I wrote 165, but it should be 265, of additional footage, waterfront. I had to come up with what that what is that, how much is that worth? I couldn't get an answer, and I don't know how to do it, okay? So I put 191 is what I put for the amount. You tell me if that's right or wrong, but that's what I put. So I took 1,998 and I backed out the 191, and I got 907 in order to compare the two properties, okay, by backing out the difference in the square footage. So I'm saying his value, if we look at the two properties and have the same same water frontage, his would be worth 907 and mine is worth 946. So his is actually worth less than mine, okay? And then if I take the 70% that they're saying they're giving me on his 907, I come up to 635, okay? So if I'm looking at the mainland property, and I back out that 191, and then I take 70% of that, I assume that's what my property should be valued at, which is 635. And if I back out my building of 219, my land should be at 416, okay? And that's how I derive my numbers, okay? By the way, my land is valued at $765,000, so it's nowhere near 416, nowhere near 416, okay? All right. You have a question?
No.
I mean, it's way off. I mean, this is crazy. It's crazy.
You're saying it's not worth 7 and it's not worth 4?
What's that?
You said, I just got confused what you're saying.
So I'm saying right here, that if you look at the 635 is the total value of the property based on this
Right.
calculation. 219 is the building.
Right.
So the land would be 416.
You're saying your land value isn't 416?
No, my land value, right, the assessed value
Right.
is 746,000. And I'm saying it should be closer to, based on this chart.
I get it,
It should be
I get it.
416. That's like 300-something thousand dollars. I mean, we're not close. I mean, it's way off. So either I'm not doing something right, or they're not doing something right. And I'm hoping you guys can help us, okay? All right, so then I went into 1B. I said, well, let's look at it a different way. So 1B illustrates our total assessed land value that did not include the 25% reduction as stated in the letter. This exhibit includes a 19.91 reduction in our land value for being a cove-facing property. So this is where I came up with this cove-facing thing, okay? And what I did here is this reduction was determined based on exhibit number 3 that I did, which supports that the 5% reduction, in my viewpoint, that 5% should be 19.91, or 20% reduction. This is based on the current land value assessments of comparable properties on the island that face the main lake as opposed to properties that face the cove. So what I'm saying is, if you face the cove, you should get a bigger discount than if you face, if you're facing the mainland. Or the mainland properties, the ones that face the main lake should be worth more, should be valued at higher than the ones that face the cove, is what I'm saying.
Well, we did this because of the discount to the 4 a kilo, because we couldn't explain it.
Right. We were trying to figure out why Forza Kilo Island got this big discount, right? So what I did was, I looked at all the properties on the line. So there's 3 comparable island properties that have the exact same waterfront on Zakilo Island, 250 feet of waterfront,
And
okay?
virtually the same lot size.
And one of them faces the cove, and the other faces the main part of the lake, okay, with the nice views and the mountains, okay? And all have almost the same acreage. The one in the front, the 2 in the front have 1.2 acres, and the one in the back is actually bigger, it has 1.3, okay? So they're almost all the same size. And if you look at Exhibit 3, okay, here's the 3 properties. And so if both the 25% and the 19% reductions were included, and our total assessed value would once again be 416,052. We provided the property card information that we obtained from the Town of Harrison's website for both our property and the comparable mainland property. In addition, we provided the map of the 2 properties to illustrate their proximity. So let's look at Exhibit 3. Okay, do you have Exhibit 3?
Yeah.
Right here.
Okay, so these are the 3 properties on the island, okay? 2 of them are on the front side, and they're valued at $739,400, both of them, okay? And then the one that's on the back side is $592, okay? That's a difference of almost $150,000, So we didn't know at the time that it was considered a cold property, okay? So we were trying to figure out, well, why is this property so much lower? So what I decided that it had to be because, since these were all the same size properties, it had to be because they're on the backside of the island.
The location.
The location is on the backside of the island. So we determined that the backside of the island should get a 20% reduction, okay? Then we found out a week ago or 10 days ago that it was because it's a cold property. So that's why you're seeing this in mine, because I submitted this in March, and they submitted theirs to me in May, okay? So 2 months later, it changed. And this is what's been going on for the last year. Every time we present something, it changes, right? Their position changes. And that's what's going to happen if we have to go to court. The position's going to change again. That's what's been happening this entire period. Every time we present something, it changed. First, it was an error. Then it was depreciation. Then we were told it was based on the actual water frontage. The guy only had 4 Kilo Island Road only had 250 feet of waterfront, and we had 320. And that's why our property was higher. And now it's a cove. Now it's that he's a cove. And next week will be something else, okay? It's getting a little ridiculous. But anyway, this exhibit was just to show you that these 3 properties on the island are the exact same size property, yet that one property, 4 Kilo Island, got a significant reduction, okay? And now we're finding, like I say, now it's a cold property, but when we did this, it wasn't, we didn't know that. Okay. All right, so let's go on to number 4. This is my favorite one, number 4. I hope you guys are going to agree with this, because this is really important, okay? And I'm going to use their letter to support the fact that you guys should be considering this, okay? You should consider this. All right, let's look at number 4. Number 4, this is very interesting, okay? On 9/27 of 2019, there was a land sale on Zakilo Island. Did you guys know that? Did you know that? I bet you didn't, because it's not in the documentation, okay? There was a land sale on Zakilo Island, and it was a property right next to mine. The guy next to me sold his land, and I'm trying to figure out how much my land's worth. That sounds like a good comparison, right? Sounds like a good comparison. It was on 9/27 of 2019, okay? It's my understanding that our assessment is as of 4/1 of 2024. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
So that's within a 5-year period. It's approximately 4.5 years ago, okay?
But well within when they started doing the assessments.
And they're certainly well within when they were started doing the assessment, which was like back in 2023.
They came to our property.
Okay, so let's talk about this land sale. Okay, this land sale occurred on 9/27/19, which is approximately 4.5 years from the date of our 2024 property assessment. This was the sale of 2.1 acres, okay, of land with 315 feet of waterfront, okay? And it's the lot next to us, the backside of the island, okay? The lot sold for $145,000, $145,000, okay? The current assessed value of our land, which is 1.5 acres, 0.6 acres less than that lot, okay? And we have 320 feet of waterfront, 5 feet more, is $746,000. That is a difference of $601,000 from 4.5 years. Our property, our land went up $601,000. Okay, it went from, if you assume that our lot was worth $145,000, and by the way, that land was sold with a septic system too. Okay, so it had a septic system on it. Okay, and I value our land was worth $103,574, which, because we only have 1.5 acres, and that lot had 2.1 acres, so our value of our land is only 71% of whatever that land sold for, because we have less property. So I believe our value of our land was $103,574 on 9/27 of 19. So we were a little over $100,000 on 9/27 of 19, and now we're at $746,000. That is ridiculous. That's almost $650,000 increase. That's ridiculous. Okay. Now, I said, please see Exhibit 2 submitted to the Cumberland County Board Assessors with our application of abatement dated 3/22/25 for additional information on this sale. So if you look at Exhibit 2 that I provided, you can see that it was 145,000 was the sale, okay?
Wait, it's on Exhibit 2?
Exhibit 2 that I provided, yes.
Where does it show the sale?
Like listed right down 3 times. Right.
Right, I didn't know if you had some document that was a proof of sale. Okay.
Well, I can show you this. That was,
Like a deed transfer, like, I didn't know it wasn't a related party transfer, someone died, estate
But
sale.
we know the people.
we know them, we know the people, we know they sold it.
Is it listed on that town card's transfer list?
Yeah, we actually, they actually accidentally included it in their stuff. I mean, it's right here. Well, I'm going to explain to you what they actually did, because it's very interesting what they did. Right there. Great. Okay. Yeah. That's on there. I don't know if that helps you. The highlighted section.
On the that property card.
See it, thank you.
You pass that to them guys too, if they want to see it. But basically, what I did here is I just took our 746 and I compared it to the 145. And by the way, ours is not 145, because this is a bigger property that was sold, okay? Ours is closer to 100,000. But that's a 414% increase from 2019 to 2024. 4.5 years, they're telling us our property went up 414%. We think that's unreasonable. We think that's unreasonable. And you know what they tell us? You can't use percentages. And they tell us we can't go back that far. That's too far to go back. You can't go back that far. But I'm going to show you in the letter that they say we can go back that far. Okay? All right. All right, let me just, all right. All right, so, did I finish this? Okay. Okay, in the town of Harrison's letter dated 4/25/25 to the Cumberland County Board of Assessment Review, which we received 9 days ago. They state, this is a quote, okay, from the town, okay? We, meaning the town, must collect sufficient sales to obtain a broad understanding of sales trends and look back at sales for the past 4 to 5 years. And look back at sales for the past 4 to 5 years, okay? Then they say, we need to adjust sales accordingly to market trends over the past 5 years. This falls within the last 4 to 5 years, and it certainly falls within the last 5 years. This sale should be considered. This sale is not on their sales list of sales that happened in Harrison. However, they spent a lot of time researching that property and making sure that they included the listing price of the property that never sold and listed it as a sale. It's listed as a sale on here, which is very misleading.
They didn't list it as a sale, but they listed it as a way to compare what our property should be worth. But a listing is a wish. It's not what something actually,
The form is listed, the name of this form is titled Comparison of Sales in Long Lake Area, Harrison only. Not a sale. Shouldn't be on here. Was a sale, should be on here. Okay. All right. Okay. In the town of Harrison's information provided with its letter dated 4/25/25,
you just said that.
Exhibit number 1, it should have listed the 9/27/19 land sale for 145. And the Exhibit 1 should not have listed the listed sales price of the property, as this property was never sold, okay, and it still hasn't been sold. And he's not going to be able to sell it. You know why? Because he bought the land for 145, and he's trying to sell it for $2.45 million.
With a house.
With the house on it. And he's not going to sell it. It's not going to sell, believe me, okay? But, that listed price should never have been included. If I listed my house at $100,000, they wouldn't have considered it. But if he's listing his at 2.4, they are considering it. Okay, in summary, I'm sure you're happy that I'm going to be done. But, okay, from the beginning, we were repeatedly told that our assessment was based on one sale. There was one sale on the island, okay? And it sold for $1,250,000 down the end of the road. And we were told from the beginning that everything was based on that one sale, because that was the only sale on the island that they would consider, because they said this other one, 145, was too old, okay? All right, so, in fact, in the letter we received from the town of Harrison as to why our abatement was rejected in January, it states that our property was assessed fairly and equitably, but cites only one property sale comparison. One sale comparison. When you were involved, we were only looking at one sale. Now that you're involved, we got all these other properties that we didn't even know about until 9 days ago, okay? Because you guys know what you're doing, I assume, and maybe Harrison didn't, okay? But, so, in the equity, cites one property sale comparison, which was 7 Zakiu Island Road, and it went on to the listing of 5 Zakiu Island Road, which, once again, was not a sale, but they keep bringing that up, okay? It seems to us insincere of Parker Appraisal to now present to the board and to us, okay, all of these property comparisons, and to also justify significantly reduced assessment of 4 Zakiu Island Road by labeling it a Cove property. That's just something they had to come up with, and they came up with a Cove property, okay? And they never presented any of these other comparison sales to us. We were basically on our own to try to figure out how we could look at all these properties and figure out how to determine whether things were done properly. So we think it's very unfair that they're coming here today saying they were using one sale and one sale only, and they told us that many times. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, then you covered it.
That's it, that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I'm gonna,
Yeah, I know I kind of talk loud, but
He's passionate
this has
about
been
this.
a very frustrating experience. This has just been ridiculous. And I'm hoping we can get some answers tonight. We just want it to be done fairly. I mean, if you think about it, if I were you guys and I saw this guy's coming in and he's saying they overassessed his property by $400,000, this guy must be nuts, right? But that's what I'm seeing. And so I want to know if I'm not seeing it right, explain it to me.
well, we're gonna try to get you some answers.
Okay.
What I'd like you to do is if you could take a deep breath and keep your rebuttal questions in check for a bit. I'd like to give the assessor a chance for her to present, and we're just going to listen, okay? And then we can ask questions later on how they went about things, because I think there's some disconnect here, okay? So if you go ahead and try to, answer whatever questions and how you went about things.
Absolutely. So I'm Jessica Westhaver, I work at Parker Appraisals. I have 2 other people who work with me, the owner of the business and the other gentleman. I don't believe I've met either one of you, so I apologize if our information hasn't, come to you the way that it needed to. So what I did, I wrote down your questions because I do want to try to explain as much as I can. So again, we have been, I shared this before, this company has been working for the town of Harrison since 1987 or 89. Our company, specifically Bob, or Robert, is very, very familiar with Harrison. He has completed 3 revaluations for the town. He's been on every single property many times, so he's very familiar with all of them. When he did go out and visit your properties during the reval, so he did physically go
We
out there
met
and
him the
visit
day
them.
he
Yep.
came.
And again, I explained to a lot of people too, because this question comes up, is that he did not necessarily go into everybody's property. We don't have time to do that. Half people don't let us in anyway. So we just make sure we collect the data that we can from the property records we have and move forward with that. The first thing, I'm just gonna kind of answer some of these questions. The 2019 sale, a lot of people have brought up the 145. We have an exhaustive list of sale data. that sale data is pages upon pages upon pages, 5 years worth of sales data. However, we have to take sales data out that is not relevant to our current market, research. And unfortunately, with the real estate market that's happened since the COVID pandemic, everything from 2020 to 2020 on has blown any sale in 2019 and before out of the water. So any sale really before 2020 is really hard to use in a process of a town revaluation because it just does not even get us the right information we need for what the market's doing. That's why that 2019 sale hasn't been included in any of our documentation because we didn't find that it's relevant based on the market. To go back to the code information, so I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. When we do revaluations, what we do is we don't do a factoring. We don't go in and say, okay, based on the market, we think everything is bumped up 150 or 50% or whatever they like. We don't do it like that. When you do a reval, what you do is you wipe the slate clean, start from zero, and then we have to build our cost schedules from the ground up. So starting from zero. So any old numbers prior to our reval don't exist anymore. We don't have them, we don't see them. The only information we have is the actual data on the properties from the property cards that we've used in the past, so square feet, size of, like how many stories, bathrooms, how much acreage, all of the, physical aspects of a property. When we look at the sales, we then have to determine, because we're doing a mass appraisal, we're not real estate agents, we're not real estate appraisers, we're trying to find out how to give the town a fair and equitable way to disperse the tax burden. So a lot of assessors use rocks or sticks as the analogy, is we could be assessing a property versus 1 stick, 2 sticks, 3 sticks, based on whatever characteristics. We're trying to give the town what each parcel's percentage of the town ownership is worth. What we do is we look at all the sales. We then have to come up with land schedules, which is one of the exhibits that I included in here. The Long Lake land schedule specifically is the neighborhood, that's what they call it, the neighborhood that we put you guys in because you are on Long Lake. And based on those land schedules, 1 full base acre is assessed at $900,000, and that's a completed well and septic property. That's also including the fact that a base acre on the waterfront is 200 feet of shore frontage. The base acre is then adjusted by a couple of different factors. It could be that it's got more or less than 200 feet of water frontage. There's also what we call a fractional acre. So the first acre, the best way to explain it is if you have 100%, 1 acre is 100% of the value. If you have a 0.9 acre lot, it's not worth 90% of 1 acre. It's a fractional calculation that's built in the system. It's used by all assessors for mass appraisal approach. So it adjusts a property's value by a fractional percent. So it's not, you can't just calculate, 0.9 acres is 90% of 900,000. There's a calculation that changes it a little bit. So a lot of the numbers when you see land values change have to do with how many feet they have on the water and also how much their acreage is. So it's not just a straight calculation that comes out even and clean. It's just a little more complicated than that. When we started with the properties, again, like I said, we put you in the Long Lake category, and we initially reduced the island properties to 85%. I think it was 80 or 85%. We had all of our hearings with the residents, and after talking to some of them and getting a little bit more information about the unique characteristics, we did adjust the 25% given. It's on the land value only. It is not on the building. So when you take that percentage reduction, it's not on the building. It's just on the land. The land, we gave everybody on the island a 25% decrease for access. knowing that, you know, they have to take their own boat and everything. It's a little bit harder to get out there. We recognize, you know, that that's part of, you know, the splendor of it, but also some of the burden. The property in question that keeps coming up, people are calling it the Cove property, but it's lot 3 on the island. So this property is unique in the fact that it doesn't have a full straight linear shore frontage. That's the reason why it got a little bit of a different treatment. It's unique from the other properties because no other property has that bend in it. So they don't get a full 250 straight view out to the water. It's kind of cut off on the side. So what we did with them was we adjusted their property. Instead of doing the standard calculation of 200 feet of frontage times its depth, which is 200 feet, that would give us what the acreage is. Because of that, we actually reduced their base acre by half, because of the lack of shore frontage, the linear feet that they had a straight standard view. As the gentleman pointed out, yes, we also gave an additional 5% reduction to 5 and 7, because of their waterfront, what they have for waterfront. They still have views and it's beautiful, but they do have a little bit of a reduced usability of the water because it can get muddy and it's a little bit more shallow. So our percentages again, and you can see these all on the valuation reports in the land factor. This property was reduced 70%. The property number 5, right next to it, was reduced 70%. But what we're calling again the Cove property, lot 3, they're also reduced. They're reduced at 75%, but again, they got the advantage of having that reduction in their base acre because of the Cove. So that's why those properties are treated like that. We also, you know, we take all of our information from the town and the assessors. The assessors meaning the Board of Selectmen, and they have an assessor that actually worked in the office. We're just the hired assessing agents. About any information, like if there's no well water in the winter, we've never been shared that information, so we don't know that. But we do get information that people snowmobile and traverse the ice and go out to that island in the winter and walk around and stuff. So while we know that's not like something you'd want to do if you were living there full time, it is accessible. It's just not convenient and probably something you'd want to rely on if you were going to live there full time. So again, that's why we gave it the 25% reduction for the access. The other thing, I wanted to bring up something else and I'm blanking, and I apologize. Oh, yeah, so the sales, the information that we included, so there's 2 maps that we included, and we didn't include them specifically for the sale data, like the property as a whole. What we did was in this chart, we included any property that had 200 feet of frontage to give you an example of what a 1 base acre standard lot would be assessed at in its land value, to kind of give you a comparison to say, you know, their land value is this based on 200 feet. So this is how we kind of came up with our value for the land. We, you know, that's what this was to provide. We know that $2.4 million property, the listing, we know that wasn't a sale. We didn't use that in our calculations to come up with values. We just wanted to use it as an opinion of value, just to show people that these are the things that are being put out there. This is the information that we have to use to be able to determine values and the desirability of these properties, which, you know, with one sale on an island, it's hard to say, yes, all of these properties are worth that, or no, none of these properties are worth that. We did look at that sale. That was one thing that gave us some information. We were able to look at all of the online listings and see what the property had to offer, the buildings, structures. We know that there was a boat and furniture that was included, so in our calculations, we took out $250,000 to accommodate for that. But again, this sold back in 2021, so we have to remember that the market has continually increased on what people are spending. So we've had to adjust those values up based on the market trends we see in a whole. So that's where we've gotten at this point to how we assess our properties. One thing I will say is that the 25%, while it's not an exact science, based on all of the calculations and the sales data that we had, we felt it was appropriate. Other than that one sale that we had on the island, we have no other data from anybody showing us, I say credible, like documented value of what these properties are worth. We have no appraisals, we have nobody coming to us saying, here, look, this is what my property's worth. We don't have that. And without that information, we have to make our best judgment. And at this point, we made sure that we treated all those island properties the same way to make sure that they're being fairly and equitably assessed. So,
Thank you.
any questions you may have?
Yeah.
For the board first, then I'll go back to you, if that's okay.
Do you want to make that?
Questions?
They're going to go to the board first.
I just want to
Of
say,
either
like,
party.
the sale for 145, and we're talking about how we don't have any information, like, and we've kind of discussed amongst each other, like at the last board meeting, like, what you do in that event is you have to use that sale. At 5 years old, so what? You have to you have to do a time adjustment. So I think that sale definitely should be considered some way, at least it would be in my method. I don't know about your method, you know? I mean, I think you say before COVID can't be used, well, it's not like, you know, things aren't increased. My house didn't increase 400% in value,
Right.
you know, so,
Well, we could go back years and collect years of.
right, but
of
you have
data.
one 5 years before.
Well, we don't have to.
You-
That's what we've chosen to do, is
Right.
go back 4 or 5 years based on what we're trying to extract.
Right.
Some towns, you go in and they have one sale. So you have to go back years and years
I
and
know,
years
I
and
know.
years and years. 5 is not a set,
Right, you have 2 sales. You have a house and a lot and a land sale,
yeah,
right.
yeah. So
And
we
I-
don't have to
and-
go.
And I don't know if you have a responsibility or not to, you know, extract them and adjust them instead of just using one. I don't know if you are required to do that or
No,
not.
so our process is very different than an appraiser.
Right.
It's 100%
Right.
different, and that's the hard part to kind of,
So, right, so is it our responsibility to kind of apply that method when necessary?
well, I don't think, because that's not what we're doing. That's
No,
not,
so I'm talking about us.
right, but I think I don't want to tell you how to do your job.
I know,
That's
I know,
not my.
I know.
That's not my, but I think ultimately what it states in the law is that the assessment value stands unless the person can
Demonstrate some other sale
demonstrate
otherwise.
other
right.
information showing
Right.
that their property is not worth
Right.
that.
Right.
And we haven't seen anything saying their property is not worth that.
Right. Let me clarify one thing.
Sure.
You did the research of, like, all of Long Lake, and you looked at land sales, you know, house sales, whatever, and you arrived at the average, you know, lot sale waterfront at about 200 feet of frontage at around 900,000. So you took in a lot of data. You didn't just base it off of the one sale on the island. I mean, you did pay attention to that. But you also kind of threw out the one at 145, because it was so old, okay? Which I have to agree, it doesn't apply to today, okay? I mean, it was nice at that time, but you're looking at values of today. And you have to base it on, I think, more current information, okay? And that's what I understand you did.
Yes.
Okay, that's just my.
I would counter-argue that, saying that, you know, normally they wouldn't have to go so far back, because it's a unique situation. They should be considering it, because there's no other sales.
Well, I guess even if you did, you'd have to adjust it so much, okay, that it would be, in my opinion, irrelevant to doing the whole lake analysis. Then that one property 5 years ago, I'd have to adjust it, and you would too, so much
Well, I
that
think they-
you would be grasping at straws.
I don't know if it's
think.
that much. I think you'd have to kind of bookend them both, but I also think if they could use, you used an evaluation, what, 2009 before this was the last time? So if they're gonna use values from 2009 to run to 2024, they're allowing a 15-year gap.
But we're not.
But she didn't do
changing the
that.
values. It's
Right.
not
They
changes
didn't
the
do that.
business
Right.
ratio.
They started over, is what they did.
Right.
Okay.
The other thing I want to point out about that sale that we're talking about is it was a non-valid sale. So we can't report it to Maine Revenue Service as a valid usable sale.
Why is that?
I can't answer that because I don't process the property's town sales. We get all that data from the office. The people that are familiar with the town, when they process all of those deed transfers and the sales and the transfer tax forms.
Registry, right?
Huh,
Does the registry do it or the town?
yes.
Right, all right.
Well, no,
Well,
the
go to the
registry
town.
goes to the county, but all of that documents get sent to the town.
Right.
As along with the transfer tax forms,
Right.
all of that data. The other thing, when you have people that work in a town office, the assessor that worked there, I mean, he's semi-retired, he's been there for, I don't know, 20 years at least. I'm just looking to Maureen, she works in the town office. He knows everybody and everything about every property that sells or moves or gets built, like he knows everything. And he's the one that determines whether there are known parties, what the stipulations were in the sales. He reaches out to the attorneys to find out if there was anything that he needs to know that they can share. So he listed that property as a non-valid sale with his best discretion for whatever reason. I just don't have that information.
So this wasn't an open market sale? Is
I'm
that-
sorry?
It wasn't an open market sale,
It
like,
wasn't a good arm's length transaction.
Sounds like,
that's, yeah,
yeah,
just to cut.
sounds
the
like there's
chase.
more to the story.
Right.
Which property did he
This is the property, the one that sold in 2019. the
2019, he
Landlord's
listed as,
property.
he didn't use it as a bona fide sale.
Correct.
Yeah.
I got
So we
Good to know.
throw
Thank
those
you.
sales
I'm
out
glad.
of our analysis.
Thank you,
And-
thank you.
Other questions, because I want to get back to them, yes.
I got just a couple of questions. So last week we had a kind of, so we have some background, a whole bunch of background material, and so that's part of the material we looked at as well, because
Yes.
that was part of the packet that you've essentially augmented the general packet that applied to everybody.
That's correct.
And then you gave us some additional material, additional I just want to make it clear that we've looked at that as well. So part of my thinking is when I looked at this material last week as well, thinking about what you've added to it. And so I guess the first question I had is the assessment of 965. Forget about how it's allocated to land and building. Is it your view that assessment is substantially in excess of the fair market value of the property as of April 1, 2024?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
For our property, yes.
Okay. And what do you, I know you've got different exhibits with different analysis, with different factoring, with a bunch of different scenarios, but I'm just putting on a more simplistic way. What do you think the fair market value of your property was as of April 1, 2024?
We talked about that. We thought it would be, what, maybe 700, 650, 700,000?
The reason we picked the property that's right across from us is because we share like kind of the same shoreline. They're on the mainland, we're right across from them. It's a very short distance, it's only a little wider than this room, really. They do face out, their property does face out into the deeper water part of the cove.
Yeah.
So they can swim and dive and jump off of their dock and all that, so they have that advantage.
And that's the Pitts Road property?
That's the
Yes.
Pitts Road property,
So-
yep. So we looked at it as, we saw what their home value was assessed at. We see what ours is. And with our access and everything, this is what the access means to us. If both of these properties were for sale at the same time, and they're essentially were assessed almost at the same value, and you were purchasing a property, would you want a property that which would be more valuable for your money? A property you could access all year round, winter, spring, summer, fall, with water, with cable, all the town amenities that you can get, well, let me finish, or mine, where you can maybe get 6 months out of it. You have to come across, no matter the weather in the boat, I guess it depends on the experience you want, but someone's gonna purchase that property before they purchase mine, which is I'm gonna have to lessen the price of my property.
So help me out. So I understand the comparison to the assessment on Pitts Road. That wasn't a sale, that was an assessment. And the assessment on your property, and you're saying, how could these properties be assessed the way they're being assessed? I get that, and for the reasons I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but I understand your points being raised. And I guess I'm just trying to understand, are you saying that the Pitts Road that's really the market value of Pitts Road, and it's not a sale, but you're saying, what I hear you saying, I'm assuming the assessment on Pitts Road represents market value.
saying it does.
And if that represents market value of that property, when I look at my property in comparison to that property, my property can't be worth that much.
Correct.
Right.
But
They told
I
us
guess-
what the market value was when they did the assessments.
But the issue for me on that is that's an assessment. That's not a sale. And at the end of the day, assessment isn't the assessment of mass appraisal isn't of, individual properties. It's this formula that they use based, as we heard, on sales of land and houses and all these different things, and then the computer does its work, and they take a look at it. So normally when somebody says, geez, I'm overassessed, the property down the street sold for X. And when I look at that property, it has these features, and it's, in comparison to my property, it's either worth more or worth less. And I'm just saying, it's harder for me to put weight on your claim that you are overvalued when you make the claim that you are overvalued based on a comparison of an assessment as opposed to a comparison of a sale. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of times, assessments can vary. It's not an exact science. They can be within 10% of market value at the end of the day if someone's trying to prove what their value is, which means if you felt the property was worth $900,000 instead of $965,000, you're within 10%, you go home. It's over. 10% is the rule of thumb. So I'm just trying to understand, I understand the comparatives. I understand that, look, I don't think I'm being treated fairly in comparison to what's happened on the island and in comparison to what's across the lake. I understand that. I just wanted to get a little more better sense of how you view the sale. What information you're relying upon to say you're overvalued. And so the other thing is, last week, when the folks were talking about that the sale that happened, the gist of the argument was that they didn't quibble with that the assessment on that property represented a fair value based on that sale. What they quibbled with was how it was perceived the sale price was allocated to land and building. And if that had been altered in the taxpayer's mind, more value should have been attributed to the building than the land, and if that had been done properly, it would have had a lower land value, and that lower land value would have been applicable to all of us. And instead of having a raw land value of $750,000, if you really had taken into account all the building improvements, it would have been down around $500,000 or whatever, and then you make adjustments for square footage. And that was the gist of the argument that I was hearing last week, and it's part of that material. And the only thing I just want to say is that, at least as I understand it, the whole notion of land and building value is as I understand it, assessors are required to make an allocation for purposes of the bill by Maine law, but when people look at whether there's either been unjust discrimination or looking at whether you're substantially overvalued, you look at both, you look at the total. In other words, it doesn't, if there's a $1 million value and they have a 100 grand on the Taj Mahal and 900,000 on a 0.2 acres, and it's just flat out doesn't make any sense, doesn't matter. What matters is the $1 million within 10% of market value at the end of the day. So I don't, you know, how the land building gets allocated, you know, you're saying that there was a land assessment, there was a land value, there was a land value put down on the bill, but the way they did the assessment was this generic approach and this and that. And so what I struggled with last time, I'll just throw it out there, you know, we didn't rule in favor, you probably heard,
We
you know,
know.
last time, and so we're just trying to be, you know, was you know, everybody had their own way of coming up where they came up, but where I struggled was I felt that, I felt uncomfortable that the Long Lake sales as a whole were being used to generate values that were applicable to the island. To me, that it looked like a separate kind of a neighborhood, and when you have separate neighborhoods, you try to make adjustments for those neighborhoods based on sales, if you have it, and there was a sale here, a good sale, and I just find, but that doesn't tell me, and I know she admitted, in essence, you know, they use 25%, or, you know, 25%, or whatever. And it was a guess. I mean, it's an estimate, and that's okay. It's mass appraisal. They don't have to be right. You have to kind of prove that they're wrong. I mean, could that adjustment be 50%? Sure. I mean, I guess so, but I guess for me to feel comfortable saying it should be 50%, and that their system, the system they use was inherently, you know, irrational, inherently discriminatory, you know, I guess I would really need to see some hard data that would support that kind of a difference in overall value between general sales along Long Lake and what you have on the island. And I just didn't feel I had that information. Part of me still feels that there should be a greater effort to get a better handle on what that difference is. And I know you recognize that there are differences. And the $1 million question, is it a 25? And it's hard, because you only go, at least you got one sale. Sometimes you have no sale and you have no idea. But, you know, I don't think the seasonal access is quite the same as somebody who's on the mainland whose road isn't plowed, so they walk down and you know, whatever. Anyways, I just want to share that with you. And you know, you did put a lot of information down. It's very helpful. It's just really hard because we take it and put it in the standard that we're given. You know, we don't just put our finger up in the wind and kind of say, does this make sense or not make sense? We're supposed to say, okay, have they proven, they're presumed correct, have you proven it was substantially overvalued, that you were market value, relative to the market value of your property? And/or have you proved that there was some kind of unjust discrimination that happened where the assessor's system, you know, the inputs they put in inherently, necessarily resulted in you being treated differently with a similar class of properties. And you know, at least that's how I filter it. So I try to take, you know, you're just trying to say, this doesn't make sense to me. Like you said, it doesn't make any sense to me. You know, I want to pay my fair share, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just saying, the struggle for me is taking that and then filtering it into the standard that we have. And sometimes that standard doesn't match up to the way you're, you know, looking at the world. And that's, you know, why we do what we try to do, and we try to do it fairly. But we don't make up the standard. We're told what the standard is, and then we do our best to apply it. So I just want to let you know that.
Okay.
But I understand, you know, and I'll be quiet. Go ahead.
No, you did fine. Anything else right now from the board? I want to let Mr. Good have any cross-examine questions, and then we can ask them more later. If that's okay, Mr. Good?
Well,
I have a question. So you said that your company's been doing the assessments since
It's
80?
either 87 or 89.
Okay. So, and you've done 3 assessments?
3 town-wide revaluations.
In the previous two assessments, that Forza Kilo Island Road was not assessed as a cove. It's never been assessed as a cove, but now it's assessed as a cove. And, we're just questioning, we spoke with that homeowner when he left that meeting. He wasn't told that that's why it was assessed that way. He just said that he went in and told them that it was the island, and the view wasn't good, and we had no access, and that's why. No person on the island has ever, until you sent that letter, and we think that you're just justifying that it was done because you realized that it was unfair. Because when we spoke with Parker Assessment, Parker Appraisal, many times, they could have said that at any time. They could have said that in our rejection letter. They could have said it at any time. It wasn't until we were coming here. And I think it's because you guys realized it was unfair. And when we were told that it couldn't have happened, that's literally what Bob Gingras, who works with you, told us. That could not have happened. Nobody was getting a break. Not one property was getting a break. It couldn't have happened. And we said, it did happen. And he said, well, I'm going to have to look into that because that can't happen. And then he wouldn't take our phone calls for weeks and weeks. And I just really feel like it's very dishonest to come in here and now say that that break was given to that person because, it's a cove. It's really hard to swallow.
Yeah,
And it's significantly less than every other property on that island. Like significantly, not 100,000, a lot. It's, at any time, and maybe that would have helped us. We had to kind of reshape what we were going to say tonight based on that information because, and we would have included it in any of this other information. And we wouldn't have probably maybe wasted as much time focusing on it. But I really think that it was unfair, and you guys knew it was unfair, and then you came here, and then you're saying this. And I just think that's wrong. I just really think that's wrong. I just want you to know that. It's
wrong. And
It's
for-
wrong. It's
For
just
40
wrong.
years, you're telling me your company appraised that property wrong. And it wasn't until 2024 that they got it right.
That's
That's what you're telling us.
hard to believe.
That is hard to
I can tell you
believe.
that they made adjustments in this reval based on the information at hand.
But not initially, but not initially.
Initially, they did not do that.
That's right.
Initially,
Not
they
initially.
assessed it at 821,000,
Yep,
correct?
yes.
I don't have that information.
We-
I have the information. They
We
did.
all speak on the island.
There was $5,000 difference between my property and his property.
And we met him coming out the door from the meeting. We were the meeting right behind him. Same person, we spoke with the same person. And that person acknowledged that he'd given a break to that person. And he said, I think all these properties need to be reassessed. They're overvalued. We're going to look into that.
I can only.
He may not have had permission to say
I'm
that.
not either one of those people, I can't answer for them.
Correct.
I
I'm
can't-
telling you what our
I hear you.
interaction is.
But
And
I
I'm sorry you
apologize.
have to come here and hear it, and I'm sure that's why you're here and they're not.
Exactly. That's why they're not here.
We know that's why
he's
they're not here.
here.
That's
I
right.
talked to them about it.
That's right. And
40 years, you
we-
guys got it wrong. For 40 years, you got it wrong.
And
And
we-
now you finally got it right.
Right.
Find that hard to believe.
And we did not get the 5% until after we constantly tried to contact Parker Appraisal.
The
For
only
2
reason there were
months in the
reductions
summer.
was because of me, because he got tired of listening to me, right?
Right.
You-
And he didn't tell us he was giving it to us.
Gave us a little bit of a break to
It
get rid of
just
me.
showed up. It just showed up on the property card. So our whole thing is that this was done, that one property was done unfairly compared to all the other properties on the island. It really isn't right that that was the case. And you're right, we can't argue sale price or anything, we don't know enough about
You don't
that.
know what you're talking about with the linear thing, maybe that's right, maybe it's not. I hope you guys will know if it's right or not, because I never heard of it. But I can tell you right now, it was made up. It was made up because they made an error, they gave a guy a break, and they didn't want to give anyone else it, and that's unfair. And
Right,
this
it's just not right.
board, in my viewpoint, is charged with making sure that things get done fairly. That's what you're charged with. And you have to decide, is that being dishonest, what they did to us or not? And if you decide against us, then you're saying they weren't dishonest. And if you decide with us, you're saying, well, they were dishonest.
And we understand you have a process and all
Well,
that.
for 40 years.
We're not saying there's anything wrong with your process. We might not have agreed with our assessments, and so we were going through the process to say we didn't agree with the assessments. But when that property got that break, and no one else got it, and there was no explanation until literally 10 days ago about why that property got that break. That's not right. It's not right.
I don't know why we had to submit our stuff in March, and they didn't have to submit theirs till May 14th, May 12th.
We had to submit ours 14 days before.
Okay, well,
But we,
it's not a very fair process, in my viewpoint.
but that was to counter what we knew what we were going to say. And it's, I'm sorry, but it's just wrong. It is just wrong. And as far as getting other assessments and realtors, he spent, believe me, several people on the island have spent months and months trying to get information from other people too, contacting assessors and realtors. Realtors told us there's no point in them coming and giving us anything because it's not the same as an assessment, and so they're not going to take it. They're not going to use it. So they said it's a waste of their time.
They said they're always going to be higher anyway. That's
Right.
what the realtors do, they go higher.
There's plenty of trainee appraisers out there that need a complex assignment
Well,
like this
and
to
we-
step up their license level.
We contacted some assessors, and several of the assessors said it would be a waste of their time because their experience of this process is the town never accepts it. Two of them said that they would come at a great expense to us, but that again, the town usually doesn't accept it and we could be wasting our money. That's literally what they said.
Yeah.
That's literally what they said to
They don't
us.
wanna put if they don't have to expose their license to risk, because they got
Well-
business elsewhere, they just, most of the time, 99 out of 100 don't wanna do it.
But, right,
It's
they
a
didn't
tough-
want to
it's a
do
tough
it and
market.
said we would be wasting our time because their experience is towns don't accept outside assessors. So we decided to just go through the process, hopefully not have to spend more money to figure out what's wrong, but, you know.
They wanted $1,500 just to come out and look at, you know,
That's
and they couldn't guarantee me anything.
Right.
cheap.
And they said they were basically going to just look at island properties and do a comparison. We weren't even sure that would fly, you know, so.
Well, Harrison told us it had to be all within the town of Harrison, or they weren't going to accept it. There's no other,
Yeah, the
there's no
comparison.
other comparisons in Harrison, so that would have been a waste of our time.
A couple other things so I would like to address the 70 Pitts Road issue you have with the, looking at a sales price as opposed to assessed value. I want to make it clear, okay? I'm comparing assessed value of 70 Pitts Road to the assessed value
Understand.
of 22 Zakil Island Road. I'm not looking at any sales prices.
I understand.
And I'm just saying, if their assessed value and our assessed value is the same, then we didn't get a break. That's
I
what I'm saying.
I understand that.
Okay, you understand, okay. All right, with regards to the Forester's house, the only thing I'll say with the Forester's house, their house is 3,300 square feet, mine's 1,050. Theirs is 3 times the size of mine.
It's not a comparable.
So if we're gonna say that that's a comparable property, that's ridiculous. Their building has to be worth more than mine if it's 3 times the size in square footage. It has to be. It has to be.
Is that the compound that's, the 1.2?
The 1.25 million,
With
yeah.
the outbuildings,
Yeah,
yes.
so we have a 3-bedroom log cabin. My kit costs, I got a kit, cost $52,000. I had it installed for $26,000, and I bought my land for $30,000. I'm in the island for $108,000. That's what I got.
Yeah.
Okay? He's got 3,300 square feet for his house, for his house, and I got 1,050. It's 3 times the size of mine. So to say that, looking at buildings isn't important, it is important. It is important. And he's on the front side of the lake, too, which is deep water, okay, and has the views, okay? And as far as the access, I don't understand what the issue is with the access. We cannot get to our property 50% of the time. We can't access the property because of snow, because of the dropping of the water. That's why we think it should be 50%. I don't see why is that so difficult? If they're saying it's 25, then they're saying we can't get to our property 25% of the time. That's 3 months. We want to know what 3 months they think we can get to our property that we don't think we can. Okay, because we don't think we can get there November, December, January, February, March, and April. We came up this year and we put in our docks on the mainland, not our dock, we haven't even put in our docks on the other side. On the mainland, we put them in on May 4th, okay?
Because we wait for the water.
We couldn't come up in April. The water wasn't high enough. We couldn't get the docks in, okay, in the mainland, which is where we put our boat to go across to the island. So if we can't get them in the mainland, then we can't go off to the island. So we can't, April is definitely out. If someone wants to argue November, they could, but it gets pretty cold in November, and I'm not sure you're gonna wanna have a boat with a motor on it, because if it gets too cold, the motor's gonna crack, right? And also, the water starts dropping, and it gets difficult to get through the mud at our property levels. So you're gonna have to you have to get out of the boat and pull a boat in through the mud. So we believe we can't get to our property 50% of the time. If we can't get to we can't access our property 50% of the time, we believe it should be 50% should be the amount. But it definitely should be higher than 25. That's,
You're going to hear both like we did last time?
I'd like to do it that way, unless you want to rule on this first and then hear the other one, or would you like to hear the other one and then rule on both?
I'd like to rule on this one first.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
is that okay? Sure. When we're done with any questions at all, do we have any other questions to either the assessor or them from the board? You got it? Any other
Well, I
questions?
have one question I just want to ask.
Please.
And it's not really relevant, I guess, well, it is, but they had asked you what your believed your property would be worth on the market, and you said 7-something, but your application says 549, so, that just kind of, for me, is
That's
like.
the land.
The values
That-
no,
That was-
549 is a total, it's
Oh,
50%
So I,
of the land.
Oh, 50%.
So we just don't know, that's just a
right,
guess on
is
their
that
part.
there's just no,
Yeah.
We
don't-
said-
We
we
were using
actually
the
said
50%, whatever.
Yeah, we said 650 to 700 would be the max, is what I said, would be the max, okay? If you get the right person at the right time, you might be able to get the right price, maybe, but that's a long shot. There's no guarantee. We're in a unique property. There's no guarantee that anyone
And it
was going to
depends
want to
what
buy
mainland
an
properties
island.
are for sale,
We put 550 because 550 is 50%
of what we're assessed.
of what,
The
of
original.
what of 70 Pitch Road is assessed at. So we think ours would be approximately that, 50%.
And
Okay.
just for, doesn't really matter or pertain to this, but to the board's decision, but my training was always that town assessed values were 70% of market.
the town assessed value is
Yeah,
70%.
around 70.
What do you mean?
That's just compared to like what things would sell for on the market.
But a town's assessment is 70% to market. If that's the case, then under state law, we're required to do a revaluation. That's the lowest we're allowed to get. So I don't know, that's the state.
Yeah, I don't know, it doesn't, it never mattered with like my doing an assignment, that's just what I was always told, so whatever.
Yeah, and I see it many times at 80, 90,
Yeah, it
okay?
fluctuates based on the market.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, let me close the public hearing part, and let's talk about this in the board and see if we can move forward on this particular one, whether either to grant or deny the request, and if we have any other debate. My comment is, there's no other raw data to prove to me that it should be adjusted to land by 50%, okay? Everybody got 25%, whether it's right or not, okay? We have to go with that unless there's some way to prove less, 35, 40, 50, whatever. We don't have that. In my experience, a fee appraisal, the assessors will look at that and many times make adjustments with an actual written fee appraisal, not a broker's opinion, okay, but an appraisal, and especially if it was a sale, that you came in, it was you bought the property, you got the appraisal, it's less than the assessed value, they will look at that, okay, and many times make some adjustment. So if you had an appraisal done, that we had something here that we could, debate the assessor, that would give us a tool.
Can we do
don't
that?
have
Can we do that? Will you let us do that? Will you give us an
No.
extension?
But-
Not today,
But that's not
sorry.
the only thing. We're also talking about the unfairness of how the island properties together were assessed, and how the one property was assessed equally with everyone, and then was just dropped down. And, you know, like I said, I think it's insincere what they're saying. I don't think that that's why it happened. I think the person that handled it was, since we spoke with him, I think he was inexperienced, and I think somebody got a lucky break, and that can't be the way that it's handled.
Okay, well, I shouldn't allow that debate. We closed the public part. It's mainly a debate between
Okay,
us.
but you're
So-
you're addressing us about one specific aspect. I just want you to
Right.
understand, it isn't one, it just isn't 50%, that's all.
I understand.
So,
Okay.
Thank you.
so,
Other debate here? Question?
No, I mean, I've said I mean, there's some things that would, I can understand why you're scratching your head. You look across the way at that other assessment. The trouble is, there's a zillion different assessments, and it can be very difficult when you find one that's like your property, and your property is on the island and this on the mainland. But there's a lot of different assessments, and that in and of itself doesn't tell me that you're overvalued. It just doesn't tell me. It tells me there may be something out of whack, but it doesn't tell me you're overvalued, and if so, by how much. And at the same time, I said last week to the assessor's agent that, you know, I still feel like this is there's a part of me that's troubled by using all of the land sales on the lake and then doing that adjustment at 25%. I don't know if that really captures the difference in terms of accessibility and having a dock on the mainland, a dock here, all of that stuff. But at the same time, you don't have to prove you're right. As you just said, it's your burden to show that they're wrong. And, you know, in a perfect world, I'd love it if you really dialed in the next year and they're looking at this and trying to see if you really have done your best job in trying to fairly be equitable to everybody that's got lakefront property, given some of the information you've heard about some of the characteristics associated with the island. But I don't know, I don't have enough to say 25% is too low. I don't know what that number should be. I don't, and so I part of, you know, granting relief is you gotta have some sense of what relief you would grant. So, you know, even if I thought that didn't make any sense, I still don't have what I would put in place. And a lot of times when you have unjust discrimination, you're saying, I should have got the benefit of this, and if you give me that benefit, then I get a reduction. And here, it's not like there's something else out there that they're not getting. It's more, like you said, what's that best estimate of what that adjustment is? And, you know, so I'm at the same place I was last week in terms of looking at this.
Okay, thank you.
I'm kind of at the same place I was last week. I do see a very calculated and understandable approach at coming out to values. The 25% is admittedly a bit arbitrary, but it does take into account the fact that there are some significant challenges. I do think it's likely more than 25%, but like anybody here, they don't have the basis for determining what, is it 50%, 45%, or what it might be. I have no clue. And there's so much that goes into, you know, comparing another property. There's so many factors that are involved in determining even that assessed value. It's hard to say what that difference might be. So at the end of the day, I'm kind of where I was last week as well.
yeah, I motion to deny the abatement appeal based on the appellant's failure to, you know, represent and meet the burden of what they think their property value is and why the valuation is wrong.
So we have a motion to deny.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any other comments from the board? All in favor of denial, based on the evidence we have? All in favor? 1, 2, 3. Unanimous. I'm sorry. I wish we could help you, but we're unfortunately,
There
we
was no
can't.
way you could have helped us.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Next, we have let's see, who is next on here? Michael and Patricia McDonough.
Michael,
Michael,
Michael only,
you're here by yourself?
afraid so.
This is for number, a tax abatement request number 27, Ezekiel Island Road, map lot 21-0106-09. And Mr. McDonough, you have the floor.
Okay. I'm not into numbers at all. I'm just here to say that I got a dishonest appraisal from the town of Harrison's officials reaching a conclusion that Ezekiel Island had access to the island just by simply walking across winter ice. It's just the limited number of days access is not our choice. It's our reality. Because we cannot meet the minimum number of days to become residents, our children cannot enter the town education system or library. Majority of the homeowners on this island are in their late 60s and 80s. We would sell our winter home in a heartbeat if we in a heartbeat if we could walk across the ice to get to our property, because we could eliminate a second home because it's so expensive to, because we can't.
Sure.
Yeah. So, we bought lots, we bought our lots back in the 80s at 65% below what typical Maine waterfront properties were. They were cheap, but they were affordable. That was what we could afford. Over the past 40 years, the only drain on the town's budget was 9 stamped envelopes every year. That's all it was. Our 2024 burden on the town was $30. The total cost of the total taxes on the island, the 9 families, was $64,000. That's a very good profit. If you're in a business and you get $30 and you can make $64,000, you're doing pretty good. Bottom line is our access time is less than 6 months each year. The limited time frame prevents us from becoming residents. The town cannot provide any of the costly services that the residents receive. It's understandable, and we accept that. That the family-friendly town of Harrison, Maine officials need to accept is that the families on the island are not a free cash token. Our taxes should be in proportion to the time frame and any burden we place on the town's budget. That's my bottom line. I don't have a whole bunch of papers.
Okay. Well, you heard everything prior, right? Over to the assessor. Would you like to make any specific comments regarding this applicant and his property or questions?
The only new thing I can present is that we can't look at if people can use the school system or use the fire department. Like, unfortunately, that's just a burden of shared. We can't use that as a.
That's not an option. We can't be there in the wintertime, so you can't use the education system.
I'm just saying, we can't use education and that can't enter our calculation. But that's the only thing.
Okay, yep, thank you.
So, Mr. McDonough, you okay? I mean, I mentioned this with the prior applicants. We had a whole bunch of information given to us last week. That packet that was meant to be applicable to all the people from the island who were appealing to us. So you're okay with that being part of what we're looking at and looking at your appeal?
Yeah.
Okay, and we heard some more information as well, which it's all now in our heads. You okay with us? I mean, I just don't want to make sure we're looking at everything that you want us to look at.
Well, my only thing is, we only can spend 50% of the time there. We put no big burden on the taxes. It's so out of proportion. I can't get into the numbers. It's just so out of proportion. I have a large family. If I could live up in Maine on that island, I would absolutely do it. I love the island, and I hate my mortgage in Massachusetts. But that's the reality. I can't get across. When I built that house, I had to go across the ice in January in 93. And 3 times, a truck went under, we were under the ice. And we called the town, and the town said you have 1 day to get it out of there, $1,000 fine a day if you don't. I mean, that ice is not something you can just jot across. And it just, I just think it's so out of proportion. I'm just looking for some fairness. I'm not looking to, you know, that's all my stick. That's it. Not much. But there's 30 days worth of work right here.
Yeah, well, thank you. We appreciate hearing from you, and for you to take the time to come here. I wish we had more information, more ways to help you. I don't know whether the town has any way to help you in the future, but, we're limited to what we can do, as you heard earlier. So with that, I've got to close out this portion of the public participation and back to the board and what decision we want to make. Unfortunately, I haven't heard anything more that I can really use.
Likewise.
Same.
It's a hard one. It's just hard because, there's clearly distinctions between the island and the mainland, and you've all identified them, and even the assessor isn't blind to these distinctions. At the end of the day, how do you quantify it in terms of, and I know you've been focusing on land and building values, but at the end of the day, we focus it in terms of overall value. To what extent is the market recognizing a distinction between general market values on the island versus the mainland? And sometimes you don't have any data. I mean, Portland has islands, Cliff Island versus Peaks Island versus Little Diamond, Great Diamond. Do you treat them like the mainland? Do you treat Peaks the same as you treat Cliff? They're half an hour longer boat ride. There's only one boat ride a day, And, here, how is this like other, you don't have any other islands in half. You got Sebago Lake with a couple of islands, whatever. But the point is, it's just hard. At the end of the day, the system puts the burden on the taxpayer, it just does. And I just say again, I just really encourage the assessor's agent to really look at this hard. And, you've gotten a lot of information here over the last, 3 months, and take a fresh eyes, because ultimately it's a judgment call. It's going to be really hard, absent more sales coming off the island, to have really good hard data that's going to give you a better sense of to what extent, if any, there is where that line is. But there is a line, and it's always good to listen and examine it. You do want to treat everyone fairly. I'm not saying you're not, but you've got the benefit here to make that call in so many, unless the market really changes. But I'm still at the same place I was on the other appeals, unless you all have something different to offer.
I'm afraid not. Jeff, any comment?
No, like I said before, I completely understand how difficult it is to get out to the island, and can appreciate that, and the less tax burden that you have on the services from the town. We have what they've provided for a reduction, which could be spot on or could be way off, but we don't have anything to prove it's different than what it is. So I'm at a point where
Okay. Al, anything further? Do I have a motion either way?
I motion to deny the appellant on the basis that they failed to provide us with a market value of their property and how it differs from the town assessment.
So a motion to deny, a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Any other comments?
nope.
All in favor? Unanimous? Again, we're sorry. We appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Can I just make a quick statement?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to give them the pictures back? Those are your pictures?
I did want to share with you guys, I spoke with the people last week, before they left, and I am gonna bring all the data that we heard from their opinions and everything. I'm not saying that's gonna change anything, but I am, no, but what I'm
Well,
saying is
hold on, Brett.
it didn't fall on deaf ears. I'm gonna bring all the data back to the town and just,
You guys weren't listening before,
Good.
and we have no reason to believe you'd listen now.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and hopefully maybe something, through the town,
yeah,
okay?
we're gonna look at it.
Good, thank you. That makes us feel like somebody's listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to say? I'm sorry. Innocent party, okay. All right, thank you.